Is it now? Do you want it?
You're joining us yet again. Another great episode, Faction 919. In the second season. We've been around for 2 seasons already, boys. I'm telling you, times are getting
Raw,
good.
we're catching up to you.
Yes, sir. Before you know it, we'll be there. The longest reigning wrestling podcast. Before you know it. As always, C. Rich, your boy Fan Man, Surfer J, JB, and Darren Stone. There he is. Darren Stone. Look as good as ever. Last week you looked good. You look even better this week, Mr. Stone.
You know it. This is the new look for me. This will be the greatest thing in the world.
And oddly enough, we found him at the DPAC. So, in a bathroom. So,
I guess he's watching Annie or something.
The sun will come out tomorrow. Catch a bottom dollar that we're doing wrestling.
I love it. So, and hey, let's talk about that wrestling itself. So, a lot has happened since we've last seen everyone. We have my wits about me here. So, some notes, Faction 919 notes this week. Things always kind of start to slow down just a little bit when we're approaching WrestleMania. In terms of new things happening, I guess. Just because they're getting their last minute build-ups in, and then boom, WrestleMania's here, and you get it all the payoffs for new storylines. But one big change has happened. We have new women's tag team champs. Isn't that something? Which JB will have more on something with that a little later on. So, how do you feel? Kind of a big change right before Mania. We have Lita and Becky Lynch, new tag champs, and it went on a part-timer, really not even a part-timer. Someone just showed up and and became tag champs. So
A legend.
there you go. It's a legend. So thoughts on that, boys, with the new tag champs and one of them being a part-time.
Well, you kind of figure maybe Becky Lynch and Lita aren't there for the long term, so maybe we're looking at new tag champs at WrestleMania.
True. Very true. And
Well, it's just that, it seems like they had been leaning towards that it was going to be Bailey and Io versus Lita and Becky at WrestleMania, and then this now just kind of like seems to throw a complete wrench into that. So, and then in my segment, I'll talk a little bit more about what the storyline is supposed to be and how that may not be happening. So who knows what they're going to be doing with these belts in the next month or so.
Yeah. And at Mania could be supposed to be Rousey and Shayna, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The rumors have been lately that it's now supposed to be Ronda and Shayna versus Becky and Lita. So we'll see how that one works. But so yeah, that could be interesting.
Yeah. Also, the biggest match is going to be Cody and Roman. And this past Friday on SmackDown, they had met for the first time in the ring against each other. And I don't know if you guys saw this back and forth, but Roman's come a long way as his mic skills. I don't know what's going on backstage. Are they saying, hey, go out there and say this? And he kind of takes it from there, or does he have a little bit written for him? Either way, delivery is great. And he hit the whole time. I thought, man, Roman's got him. This is it. Roman's already won. That's it. And then Cody doesn't say not much back, but he says just enough. And now instead of finish the story, it's like have to. It's a necessity. So I like the way he changed that. The thoughts on the mic skills, the verbal battle between the two. What do you guys think on that one?
It's kind of crazy because I remember when Roman was going against John Cena a couple years back, and
Right.
Cena was just wiping the floor with him. It was like Roman couldn't even gather himself.
Yes.
But maybe they've just said, hey, maybe Roman is coming up with some of this stuff instead of being told to say something. He may have a hand in it, so it's not coming off so forced like it used to be when he was trying to recite lines.
Exactly.
Suffering succotash. He's completely changed.
Yeah. See, I remember Cena even saying to it, it's a promo, kid. It's called a promo. Called him out in front of everybody. So yeah, he's coming along. I can see some of that being his own attitude. And
yeah, it seems like he's getting into his own cadence. Especially, I mean, in the Vince era, it was like a lot more scripted and everything. I'm wondering if Triple H is going just get this out there, just say it, and he's able to say it in his own words instead of having to say phrases like "suffering succotash" and everything else he had to say, where he's probably thinking way too hard about getting that line so Vince doesn't yell at him.
Yeah. Let me ask you guys this: is anyone sold yet that Cody can be and will be that next guy?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, with the hype, I mean, granted, it's WrestleMania. There's going to be hype.
Yeah.
But there seems to be a whole lot of stuff riding on this in the sense that if you weren't going to hold the title, why would you come back?
Yeah.
Why would Cody Rhodes come back if he wasn't going to do it? Now you can make an argument for the paydays, you can make an argument for that kind of stuff, and for the storyline, and which has been very, very good. However, I mean and I've said this before, if you're looking for someone to take the title from Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes is a good idea because he can take the ball and run with it. He can do it as face. He can do it as heel. He's great on the mic. He's great off the mic. He's a great in-ring performer. And there's a believability factor with him and the fact that he has the pedigree with it as well. I personally think that, besides, this is the match I want to see at WrestleMania anyway. I want to see Reigns and Rhodes.
Yeah.
But I think certainly Cody Rhodes may walk out of there as champion.
The makings of a superstar, says C. Rich.
Yeah.
And Dan Stone, is he as real as a champion as you are, Mr. Stone?
He is not. I knew Dusty. I knew him well. He almost hit me with a cowbell rope, and I'll tell you what, Roman's gonna mop the floor with him. Roman forever, bloodline pointing to the sky.
Some would agree, I would say. The next big superstar.
I think we need to start muting his mic.
He is out of hand sometimes. Not as much as in the past. But the next big superstar. Oh, actually, before we leave this subject, Roman Reigns also tells Jimmy that, hey, if he's not back, I'm gonna give him a week. Jey Uso has went and done his own thing. We haven't seen him. He said, I'm gonna give him a week, and if he's not here, I'm blaming you. So there already is some ruffled feathers in the bloodline. So
Friction.
yeah, can Roman
Friction
live
919.
Friction in the crowd.
So can you guys see Roman without the bloodline and still having the success he's got? Can he do it without him?
My thought would be if you were to drop the title and at WrestleMania, the bloodline splits apart, what would happen is he would go on a hiatus for a while, and then come back strong. That would be my guess. I mean, the dude is talented enough and he knows enough people along the Hollywood lines that he could go there and probably have a pretty good little career. I mean, it's not like, nobody's going to be The Rock, but I mean, he has the look, he has the physique, he's a pretty smart guy, and he has the talent to do Hollywood.
Yeah.
Did you see him in Hobbs and Shaw? I tell you what, he stole every scene from The Rock in that movie. The Rock can't hold a finger to Roman Reigns.
Speaking of puppets, Bray Wyatt. Now we're starting to see Uncle Howdy a lot more in the ring. This past Friday, we actually seen him more in the ring, and I noticed this isn't a big deal, but for the first time he was able to sell. He got hit by Bobby Lashley, and you seen him being a wrestler for the first time. So he is human. So I wonder where that's going to go, and how long before will Uncle Howdy ever remove the mask and show that it's Bo Dallas or whoever it is? Will we ever see Uncle Howdy come in as a wrestler, or do you think they're going to keep him behind the mask for a long time, or is this a Mania payoff? It's a SummerSlam payoff? Where does Uncle Howdy and Bray Wyatt go from here? I know Bobby Lashley is probably the next step at Mania. They haven't officially announced it. Or have they? Have they officially announced that match? Or is it still leaning towards that?
I don't think they've officially announced it, but it's pretty much gonna be, I believe, Bobby versus Bray, because I didn't put this in my section, but there was some backroom talk that Brock has no desire to deal with Bray Wyatt.
Right.
He doesn't want to deal with the storyline aspect of it. He just wants to go out there and punch things and suplex, and he doesn't want to have to think about stories. That's what I was reading online. I was just like, oh, okay, I could see why this is now going to Bobby Lashley.
Right.
But we'll have to see about that. And it's just, I'm trying to think, is this going to be like a 2-on-1, or is Uncle Howdy not going to be involved at all? And this is just him. Are they just believing to use him now to save Bray from being on TV? So
very interesting. With Bray, you never know. Never know what's going to happen or what's going on. So
I auditioned for one of the puppets. I was told I couldn't do it.
Does that make you feel sad? Do you feel like you're left behind there? You think you're better than Husky the Pig?
I don't feel that friendship ever really began.
So just how butthurt are you about this?
Seriously, it is like, I wanted that part of the rabbit. I felt I could have done the rabbit better. I should have been the rabbit. And they said no. They said, you're a pirate. You can't be a rabbit. I was like, I have range.
Would you want on as Darren Stone, or do you have another name?
Oh, no, it was going to be Darren Stone all the way. I mean, that was also another problem. They were like, you have to be a rabbit name. And I'm like, no, Darren Stone does not change.
I love it. So, and as of right now, as we're speaking to you, ladies and gentlemen, AEW Revolution. So, but don't turn that channel from us, all right? So, don't go watch that. Watch it later. Watch us first. So, AEW Revolution is on right now. You'll hear us talk about that probably in the next episode. But anything else? Anything big that you guys wanted to mention before we take a minute here? I guess now at WrestleMania, we're building up to WrestleMania. Like I said, everything's a little bit slower, and then we get the big payoff in Mania.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that's it. There is that right, boys? But a lot going on. Less than a month away from the Super Bowl for WWE WrestleMania. So, but before WrestleMania, you got another podcast you can watch. If you're a Carolina Panthers fan, the DNA show, and we're going to show you all the independent stars you can catch in your area.
Hey, Carolina Panthers fans, this is Donnie.
And I'm Anthony.
Hey, look, you want a place to go for all your cardiac cast info?
Then we got just a show for you.
This is the Donnie and Anthony Show.
And all Carolina Panthers podcasts. For all your Carolina Panthers info, the Donnie and Anthony Show, the DNA Show. Because of Black and Blue runs through our DNA.
Keep pounding.
Saturday, June 17th, Mooresville High School, Mooresville, North Carolina. Bubba Amek Promotions presents Race City Rumble. Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson, Kerry Morton, Lodi, and others on the card. Saturday, April 8th, Nashville Armory, Nashville, North Carolina. Maximum Adrenaline Experience presents Resurrection. C.W. Anderson, Damian Wayne, the Mid-Atlantic Outlaws, Lewis Moore and Matt Houston, plus others on the outstanding card. March 26th, Catawba Valley Community College, Hickory, North Carolina. AEML Wrestling presents the Red Hawk Rumble. AEW's The Guns, plus the top stars of AEML Wrestling will be there. Saturday, March 25th, West Davidson High School, Lexington, North Carolina. AEML Wrestling presents Monsters Unleashed. Former WWE superstar Eric Rowan, AEW's The Guns, NWA legend Nikita Koloff, and the stars of AML Wrestling will be on hand for this Special Olympics fundraiser. Saturday, March 25th, Chestnut Grove Middle School, King, North Carolina. Freestyle Championship Wrestling and America Lucha Wrestling present Wrestle War 23. Jason McDowell, Mike Mars, Jason Michaels, and others on the card. Sunday, March 19th, Southside Recreation Center, High Point, North Carolina. Revolution Wrestling Authority presents Night of Champions. The Rock and Roll Express's Ricky Morton, Kerry Morton, Ali Steele, Rob Killjoy, and reality TV star Johnny Fairplay all on the card. Saturday, March 18th, Jacksonville Commons Recreation Center, Jacksonville, North Carolina. Integrity Championship Wrestling presents Beginning of a New Change, a fatal 5-way elimination match featuring The Infinite Man, Diego Hill, Chris Bay, and others. Saturday, March 11th, Civitan Volunteer Fire Department, Supply, North Carolina. A benefit for Foster Brunsko. Dave Dawson versus Lucky Ali, plus others on the card. There's great wrestling action all across the region. You won't want to miss it. Be there!
And some stars you can see in your area coming up at independent shows. Now, not current, but we're going to go back in time. Man, see Rich.
We're going to go way back in time.
In 1984, roughly, you were there. And Night of Champions, Jim Crockett Promotions. Tell us about it, baby.
Yeah, Norfolk, Virginia, 1984, June of 1984. We go into we talk about the card, the Night of Champions card in Norfolk, but we also talk about kind of what leads up to that. There's a reason why Jim Crockett Promotions had to put the Night of Champions card up, and he had to get talent from other parts of the country. There was a reason for that, and we look into that reason here right now. June 1984 was a pivotal time in professional wrestling. 1984 was the year that would change the face of the sport forever. The World Wrestling Federation under Vincent K. McMahon had started its national expansion, and Hulkamania was starting to blossom. Hulk Hogan had won the WWF title from the Iron Sheik in Madison Square Garden on January 23rd. Hulk Hogan was world champion and had main eventers the WWF cherry-picked from all over the territory system. Wrestlers like Roddy Piper, Paul Orndorff, and Greg Valentine would be in the mix with guys like Andre the Giant, Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas, and Tito Santana. McMahon was parading his troops across the country and striking fear into promoters in the old system. By the end of 1984, McMahon's WWF expansion from the Northeast had already gone into over 20 states and in the bigger cities of Canada. In May and early June of 1984, the WWF was promoting shows in the Mid-Atlantic territory in cities like Richmond, Winston-Salem, and Norfolk. In less than a month, the WWF would be in Memphis, Louisville, and Nashville, and then Atlanta. Many fans were divided regarding the WWF's expansion. There were many long-standing fans in these cities that didn't like the WWF coming in with their brand, but others saw it as an opportunity. It gave fans a chance to see stars that were outside their area. It also put pressure on the local promoters to provide more impactful and star-studded shows. One way the territory promoters responded was by banding together to put on bigger shows and share talent. This was the case on May 29, 1984, as the National Wrestling Alliance put on a huge show in the New York City area at the Meadowlands, also known as Giant Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. The Meadowlands is roughly 10 miles from Madison Square Garden in New York City. The main event on that card saw NWA World Heavyweight Champion Ric Flair defeat Ricky Steamboat in a little over 30 minutes of action. Also on the card were Dusty Rhodes, Tully Blanchard, Carlos Colon, Wahoo McDaniel, Stan Hansen, Jake Roberts, King Kong Bundy, and the Road Warriors. According to published reports, the attendance for that show was somewhere around 14,000. As impressive as that might sound, in March, the WWF pulled over 21,000 at the same venue. The WWF threat was real, and groups like the NWA, the American Wrestling Association, Memphis, and World Class Championship Wrestling had to respond. The Mid-Atlantic region of the NWA responded by putting together Night of Champions cards across the region. One such card was Thursday, June 7, 1984, at the Norfolk Scope Coliseum. In the opener, Paul Kelly beat Keith Larson. Larson was the younger brother of successful Mid-Atlantic wrestler Don Kernodle and would get a push in the next year. The second match featured a battle of the veterans as Mid-Atlantic legend Johnny Weaver beat Bobby Bass. This was the same no-class Bobby Bass that saw success in Tennessee and Kentucky. Pistol Pez Watley came out smoking as he downed Kurt Von Hess. Watley was coming off a successful stint in Georgia, while Von Hess was a guy that was successful in other areas as well. The future Barry Horowitz had a tough task ahead of him as he faced Kamala the Ugandan Giant. Using the name Bret Hart, he would lose to the Ugandan newcomer. Stan Hansen nearly decapitated Jesse Barr with his lariat to win their match. Rufus R. Freight Train Jones beat the Assassin. Rufus was part of a long-running feud siding with Jimmy Boogie Woogie Man Valiant against Paul Jones and the Assassins. In a very interesting matchup, former NWA World Heavyweight Champion Harley Race defeated up-and-comer Angelo Mosca Jr. After the match, Race and Angelo Mosca Sr. had a bit of a stare-down. This was one of the first times the Road Warriors would appear in Virginia as a tag team. They went to a no contest with King Kong Bundy and the Junkyard Dog in a wild match. Wahoo McDaniel defeated longtime rival Tully Blanchard. Blanchard was the NWA television champion at the time, but Wahoo got the pin after the time limit for the belt had expired. Ironically enough, over the course of the next year, Wahoo would turn rule breaker and end up teaming with Blanchard. The Fabulous Freebirds got a shot at the NWA World Tag Team Champions, Don Kernodle and Ivan Koloff. This was one of the few appearances for Terry Gordy, Buddy Roberts, and Michael Hayes at a house show in the territory. They appeared on TV several times, but those matches were pre-recorded in Raleigh. On this night, the Birds would win by disqualification over Koloff and Kernodle, with the two holding on to the belts. In the main event, it was a rematch of the Meadowlands Classic from a few weeks prior, as Ricky Steamboat challenged Ric Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight title. In the storyline, Steamboat was coming out of retirement to go for Flair's world belt. This match was a classic as well, as the challenger and champion went to a 60-minute time limit draw. Of the 28 guys that were on this card, 14 of them would eventually end up in the WWF. We all know the end of the story. The WWF WWE would become the dominant force in professional wrestling. However, in the 1980s and 90s, there was a hard-fought rebellion that would become the stuff of legends. And to show you how long ago that card was, that was a week before I graduated from high school. So, but it's really interesting because, you know, the NWA was a collection of promoters that didn't always get along, and Vince just sliced through them like a hot knife through butter. And there was repercussions for that. You know, I mean, you know, there were these promotions went out of business, and, you know, wrestlers coming in didn't have as many places to go to hone their skills as they did, you know, 5-10 years earlier. And, you know, in a lot of ways, it shaped what today's product is, or at least the product of the 90s, as to how that was. But it was a very interesting time to be a wrestling fan then, because there was a lot of transition, and not just in the NWA, but the WWF was transitioning as well. So, I mean, like I said, a very interesting time to be a wrestling fan.
Now, do you remember what the crowd was like when you were there?
It was a better than average crowd. Usually Scope got somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000. I'd say there was probably 9,000 people there, which would have been a really good night for them. But the Meadowlands, when they did their Night of Champions there, had 14,000. And then the WWF, who was in the Meadowlands before, about 2 months before, had 21,000. So you know, the Northeastern cards always did better because there was more people up there.
Yeah.
The Southern cards, you know, you had your big cities that drew well, and sometimes your smaller towns like Hampton or Fayetteville or something like that may draw a pretty good crowd. But more times than not, it was usually Greensboro, it was usually Charlotte, it was usually Richmond, it was usually Norfolk that was going to draw, you know, pretty big crowds and such.
Yeah. What year did you graduate high school, Darren Stone?
I graduated in 1826, and then I became a pirate. I went to
Yeah.
ECU.
Very nice. So, a part of history, Sea Ridge was at one point. It still is. You're the historical Sea Ridge. Always bringing.
I'm certainly history. Thank you very much.
I like it. So, hey, you see, we're on all social medias, from Facebook all the way to TikTok at Faction 919. You'll find us on there, and we'll show you where else you can find us. And also, we have a big question for you.
It's time for the Faction 919 Big Question. The big question: what wrestling manager through the course of their career has had the greatest impact on professional wrestling? Send your answers to faction919nc@gmail.com. We'll take a look at the answers and compare them to our own on our next show.
All right, and our big question there, basically, favorite manager and who had the biggest impact for you of all time. So, JB, doing some more digging. What's going on beyond the gorilla position?
Excuse me. Well, first of all, we mentioned about the tag team, women's tag team title change, and the rumor had been going around that it's supposed to be Becky and Lita versus Ronda and Shayla. Well, this week it has appeared that Ronda is actually now injured, and there's been reports floating around that she may still do WrestleMania, and they may continue on with the plan. But if she wins it, she's going to take an extended time off to heal. So how is that going to actually work out? So will they continue this on with her being injured, or will they have to change it last minute? So what do you guys think about that one, about Ronda being injured and them having to, do you think they're going to keep on with the same program of her and Shayna versus Becky and Lita, or are they going to have to pivot to something else?
I mean, it was out of left field for me that Lita even came back, so I could see them really pivoting to anything at this point.
Good point.
It's true.
I mean, since
Yeah.
Dakota's back, I mean, I'm surprised they don't try to throw it back onto Damage Control to get them a little bit more momentum. I mean, that's what I would see. But I mean, Ronda's Ronda. She's, I guess, a draw. So I mean, they could throw it on her and she could not wrestle. And I mean, that belt is that belt unfortunately has not been used that much.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'd hate to see that, but I mean, just have it off the shows or anybody using it. But I mean, that's one possibility. So second is I wanted to kind of do a discussion is with AEW. They have been having some fun times in the locker room continuations. We've talked about the CM Punk situation with the Elite, and this week Eddie Kingston on the show said he quit AEW and is now in Ring of Honor. But he's also throwing barbs, even still being within the same Tony Khan universe, that he enjoys the locker room better at ROH. And he has had a lot of problems in that locker room. Fights with Sammy Guevara, Santana Ortiz, there was issues in there. He's just like been fighting, it feels like, everybody. And it's just interesting that he would throw that kind of comment, how much better Ring of Honor is than AEW, and how everybody just doesn't try to go out for themselves.
Well, I wonder. Of course, there's fight. I'm sure there's fights and stuff in the locker room. WWE, what I'm being Bret Hart's, famous stuff, and you always hear rumors. But it seems like AEW locker room has a lot of things that go on. Why do you think it's more that happens more there and not a whole lot in WWE? But you think WWE has more enforcers back there, where you kind of, like Taker was the backstage enforcer, and you had to go through him before you started doing any kind of crazy stuff, and they had wrestlers court and stuff like that. Do you think AEW kind of falls apart backstage?
Personally, I think they just don't have. I think part of the I don't think they need a wrestlers court, but I think they're all too. Everybody seems to be too chummy with. There's a certain group that is definitely chummy with the management, and then there's a certain group that are probably chummy with the dirt sheets, and there's a divide in there. Because the next group that I was going to talk about is FTR, where it's like every other week, it's like Dax Hardwood is saying, "Oh, I can't wait to be out there and just be part of the team," and then next tweet followed up with, "Oh, I can't wait for April. I need to get out of here. See what's going to happen next." And it's like, what's going on? They've unfortunately, I think they've kind of hitched their ride to CM Punk a lot, and that's kind of hindered them.
Yeah.
But Dax has even said, I think I get a lot of heat backstage because of I'm outspoken.
Okay.
He may be outspoken, but then there's also a point where being outspoken becomes into being kind of a jerk at times. I mean, I know there's people here who have connections to Dax, and he seems like, not a bad guy, but he kind of could work against his own self sometimes.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you guys have heard or anything?
Well, go ahead, C. Rich.
No, this was
I know
not
we've
one.
had, we've had conversations where it's like, once things done a certain way, and it's like, oh yeah, we understand, but at the same time, you can't always get your own way, and you're gonna have to have like some kind of compromise. And it feels like he doesn't quite have that ability to want to compromise. Is that kind of what the
Well,
thought is? In
the only thing-
nicest way possible.
the only thing I'm going to say regarding this is yes, I know or was close with Dax Harwood at one time. And all I can say is that he is one of the hardest workers I have ever met. When he was on the indie scene, I don't think there was anybody that worked harder than he did to get to where he is now. And he's sacrificed. And he has done everything pretty much right. I mean, he has a beautiful family. He's loyal to his friends, and he has made his friends and his family and all of us that knew him and loved the guy very, very proud of him. And that's all I'm going to say.
Very nice.
From my experience,
go ahead.
Dax Harwood is very passionate about wrestling. Sometimes that passion leads into other things, backstage drama, but he is very passionate and he will always fight for what he believes. And sometimes he fights against losing battles. But another thing about the backstage in AEW, how many people has Tony Khan fired? Like, I think a lot of people aren't afraid of being fired because they know Tony Khan probably won't fire them, so they just kind of do what they want backstage.
I don't think they've actually ever fired anybody. There's been a couple contracts not re-signed or moved forward. I mean, even right now, CM Punk is still technically under contract, but they're saying there's no way he's ever coming back.
Who's an enforcer backstage at AEW?
That was my next question. Good question, C. Rich.
I don't know if there is one.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, if
the
there's
whole-
not one, that's part of the problem.
right.
Well, they had that conversation where it was like the Bucks and Kenny Omega in front of everybody saying, "Hey guys, we need to get this going." But then Kenny Omega tried to be jokey and came off looking very badly. He's like, he's like, "Oh, I would have only hired like 8 of you," and it's like, "Oh, you don't say that."
Yeah.
I mean, if you're joking in that kind of a tone,
It has
Yeah.
to come from somebody who has been there to the top of the mountain and that people will respect. Maybe that's a Chris Jericho. Maybe that's a Christian Cage. I don't know, but I would imagine somebody to that level should be the voice of reason in that locker room.
Yeah. It's true. I wonder if
I
Jericho
think
could step up to that.
he stepped up somewhat. I mean, it's hard to say how much he's actually stepped up because a lot of this comes from the dirt sheet.
Yeah.
And supposedly he's very in with Meltzer and a couple other people. So, I mean, things could be coming in slanted from his side,
Mm.
but it seems like he does try, but it's just like, I'm wondering if it's like herding cats because there's so
Yeah.
many people who've come from different backgrounds within the indie circuits. I mean, I was trying to talk about this week of like how many people in the industry that that have backstage drama, and I just kept coming across a bunch that were all in AEW. Andrade is another guy who just seems to have constant problems. I mean, Sammy Guevara, who's had tons of fights with, it feels like every third person. So, I mean, there's just like, is it just a locker room of where they've got too many strong-willed people? And I feel like I'm not trying to attack FTR because I actually really like them as a tag team, but it's just like, I'm just wondering at times if they're going against their own interest at times.
Can I throw a kind of a blast from the past? That's something that happened to me while I was promoting. I had a show. I mean, keep in mind, when you're a promoter, everybody comes to you and wants to be on your show. Everybody wants to, and you have to kind of keep Surfer Jay can probably attest to this. You have to kind of keep a pretty tight roster. Okay. I had like 22, 23 people on a show one time. And I remember George South came to me and said, that is way too many people. You do not need that many people. Less is more. And I look at AEW and I think to myself, less is more because they have people, they have tons of people that, you see 1 week, you don't see him again for another 3 weeks. Everybody has a championship and all this other stuff. So it's almost like nothing means anything to the viewer because there's just a crowd of people and everybody's wearing a belt.
Yeah.
And you're not going to create anything special that way. And if your storylines are crap, then that's only going to make the problem even worse.
I like it. Also, they're missing that that probably 7 foot, 300-pound enforcer, like the Undertaker. So Jericho's not. I don't think he's going to measure up to that. But like Samantha said, one of our viewers in the chat says it sounds like a drama room, not a locker room. So, so I like it. So a lot of woes, JB. I like it. You have been digging deeper than you ever have.
Oh, and there was also, I forgot, we had a third one that we were going to bring up. Again, can you believe anything that comes out of MJF's mouth? Supposedly people within the WWE have been talking or saying to MJF that they would like to bring him in, and he has been saying that he would really enjoy going to WWE. So could this mean that at the end of 2023, he becomes a superstar? Or is this just him trying to fight an angle yet again? The guy who lives the gimmick, is he just pulling a Brian Pillman on everybody yet again?
I could see him just pulling another Pillman, because I think Khan signed him to an extension whenever he was doing the shenanigans last time. So I think it would be a while before he could ever go to the WWE anyway. And I think he knows that if he goes to WWE, he's going to be hindered a lot, and he's going to have to play by their rules, cut promos their way. At AEW, he pretty much does whatever he wants. So does everyone else, apparently, in the locker room.
Yeah, no more motorboating. Yeah, that would be fun for sure. But yeah, I want to ask. I don't want to take you over here, JB. But what if MJF goes to WWE? What's his ceiling? What's his floor? What do you guys think?
I think that depends on him. If he's going to be a team player, maybe he's the next big thing up there. But if he's going to walk around and, act like he did in AEW, like Surfer Jay said, I don't think that's going to work too well. And I don't think the boys are going to be too appreciative of that.
It's true.
I think his ceiling could be champion, but then again, he could be going back to a story C. Rich showed us a while back. He could be Nature Boy Buddy Landau. I could see him flaming out, not of his own accord or his own talent. Well, not because of his not having a talent, but he could rub somebody the wrong way, try to do what he has been doing in AEW, and finding out, oh no, this doesn't fly here. So I think he could have that kind of the sky's the limit, or he could fall. He could be Icarus and go too high and get his wings burned off.
Right.
I could see that too. On Dex Hardwood's last podcast, they talked about the Pinnacle, which was the group that him and FTR and Wardlow and MJF were all in. And he talked about how he said the Pinnacle was pretty much created just to get MJF over. And anytime Dax came with ideas like, oh, let's have, Tully was in it. He wanted Tully to cut promos. He wanted MJF to come with them. MJF nixed a lot of it and pretty much just did his own thing, and it rubbed Dax the wrong way, at least.
Dan Stone, did he live up to anything that you've ever done?
I don't think there's anything in his mouth or anything controlling his mouth right now. Hold on.
Oh God, what is he doing?
Where'd he go?
Sorry, I went off for a smoke break. MJF cannot hold a candle to what I am able to do. I will tell you that I am the best promo. MJF needs to come and be in my stable, and he will be.
I like it, man. So not only watching fights and now whatnot, but hey, you can also catch the Carolina Panthers podcast and some superstars that are in your area, and we'll be talking to one of those guys that you can find in your area coming up.
Hey, Carolina Panthers fans, this is Donnie.
And I'm Anthony.
Hey, look, you want a place to go for all your cardiac cast info?
Then we got just a show for you.
This is the Donnie and Anthony Show.
and all Carolina Panthers podcasts. For all your Carolina Panthers info, the Donnie and Anthony Show, the DNA Show, because the black and blue runs through our DNA.
Keep pounding.
Pounded.
Saturday, June 17th, Mooresville High School, Mooresville, North Carolina. Bubba Amec Promotions presents Race City Rumble. Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson, Kerry Morton, Lodi, and others on the card. Saturday, April 8th, Nashville Armory, Nashville, North Carolina. Maximum Adrenaline Experience presents Resurrection. C.W. Anderson, Damian Wayne, the Mid-Atlantic Outlaws, Lewis Moore and Matt Houston, plus others on the outstanding card. March 26th, Catawba Valley Community College, Hickory, North Carolina. AEML Wrestling presents the Red Hawk Rumble. AEW's The Guns, plus the top stars of AEML Wrestling will be there. Saturday, March 25th, West Davidson High School, Lexington, North Carolina. AEML Wrestling presents Monsters Unleashed. Former WWE superstar Eric Rowan, AEW's The Guns, NWA legend Nikita Koloff, and the stars of AML Wrestling will be on hand for this Special Olympics fundraiser. Saturday, March 25th, Chestnut Grove Middle School, King, North Carolina. Freestyle Championship Wrestling and America Lucha Wrestling present Wrestle War 23. Jason McDowell, Mike Mars, Jason Michaels, and others on the card. Sunday, March 19th, Southside Recreation Center, High Point, North Carolina. Revolution Wrestling Authority presents Night of Champions. The Rock and Roll Express's Ricky Morton, Kerry Morton, Ali Steele, Rob Killjoy, and reality TV star Johnny Fairplay all on the card. Saturday, March 18th, Jacksonville Commons Recreation Center, Jacksonville, North Carolina. Integrity Championship Wrestling presents Beginning of a New Change, a fatal 5-way elimination match featuring The Infinite Man, Diego Hill, Chris Bay, and others. Saturday, March 11th, Civvytown Volunteer Fire Department, Supply, North Carolina. A benefit for Foster Brunsko. Dave Dawson versus Lucky Ali, plus others on the card. There's great wrestling action all across the region. You won't want to miss it. Be there.
All right, so guys that you can find in your area. Now, Surfer J, you searched the area, came up, Willie Watts. That is your guy that you were able to sit down with, Independent Star. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we sat down with Cowboy Willie Watts, former North Carolina indie wrestling star. This week one, you kind of get an introduction on who he was and his first and only match in the ECW arena, wrestling for CZW. Cowboy Willie Watts, Kenny, how you been?
In the place to be, man. I've been great, man. Being great, brother. As the gray hair comes in, and I go to the second, the laid back phase in my life, man. Everything is good though.
Yeah, it's good to see you. It's good to hear from you. Go ahead and introduce yourself to people who don't know.
Yeah, same here, man. Like he said, I guess you never say ex-professional wrestler, because once you're a professional wrestler, you're always a professional wrestler. But as when Jeremy met me, I was doing a gimmick called the Bounty Hunter. Started it all, and then I kind of transitioned into Cowboy Willie Watts with the Urban Legends. Jeremy, I hate to say this, what was my tag team partner name, man? And that brother has passed since. What was his?
Thez.
It was Luther Thez. It was Luther Thez. Do you remember? I can't think of what his original name, but it was Luther Thez was the gimmick. We were doing the Urban Legends.
Cold Cash.
Cold Cash. There you go. That brother has passed away and was a real good dude. Me and him tagged for a while, and then me and then Chili Willie came in. Original ECW Chili Willie came in, and he became Cowboy Black Bartz, and I was Cowboy Willie Watts, and we took it to a whole nother level. We started doing traveling everywhere. Then in between there, we kind of had an alter ego from the good old country boys to the American gangsters, and we took that gimmick even farther. Was doing TV down in South Carolina, was doing NWA South, as they call it, up in Charlotte, North Carolina. Yeah, that was the three gimmicks. I started back. I was a little older. I started when I was about 29 years old. Was broke into the business, and I always say you never forget, even though if it wasn't great memories, you never forget. I was broke into business by a guy named Viper. From Viper, there's a guy named Nemesis who's very well known on the North Carolina, this part of North Carolina, Rocky Mount, Goldsboro, Raleigh area, and he kind of finished me up to CW fine tuning me. CW Anderson fine tuned me, was training with CW. Me, him, Scotty Matthews, who I've had so many hard hitting matches with, used to train with him quite a bit. So yeah, man, I did it. I worked. I wrestled for probably anywhere from for about 15 years. I stayed in the business, actually competing. I don't compete no more. I do stay in shape. I get people all the time say, "Hey man, come back to wrestling." Like I tell them, I do a manager gimmick, but the bumping days are over with, man.
The first footage that I could find of you is you as Bounty Hunter. You're wrestling Corey Edsel in USIWF.
Yes,
in Winston-Salem.
Yes.
I think you were the champion, and it was a hell of a match.
Yeah, I had some good matches with Corey, man. Corey was Corey for a big guy could move. Corey could do a standing drop kick for a guy over 300 pounds. Corey was real good. And he was a good person all the way together, man. I kind of got into that area. I was actually brung in that area by a guy named Kurt Solo that got me into that area because I when I was wrestling, it was mostly the Rocky Mount, Whitakers and that area, and then got introduced to a guy named Kurt Solo, and he had me at it used to be a club called The Click, I think we used to wrestle at up that area, and then Rob McBride and Corey and all them guys is where I met all them guys, and of course CWF, which was an awesome little thing going at one time with Jeff Rudd. They kind of opened their arms to me, man, and it just went from there.
Yes, you've kind of been all the way around all the North Carolina promotions.
I have been as far as the mountains all the way down to the coast. Yes, sir.
Yeah. There was actually one match I found that was in Philadelphia, CZW.
Yeah.
It was you, Scotty Matthews, a couple other guys in like four-way.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing about that match is when you and Scotty show up, the crowd has no idea who you are.
Not a clue. And Philly is hard to get over. We was actually in ECW Arena, bro.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even going to lie. After that match, I actually had the promoter come up to me and say, "Man, are you from here?" I was like, "No." He's like, "Bro, what y'all just did and to get over like that doesn't happen. Or if you ever in this area, come and work anytime."
Put a spear.
So that when you guys go into that match, nobody knows who the hell you are. But by the end of the match, they're both chanting for y'all to come back.
Up and over, Eric. He's quick. Oh, look at that Total World side slam.
Yeah.
Something that usually don't happen, especially at a CZW in a hard crowd like that.
This is the crazy part. Right before we did that show, 01 did a show. So we're talking Homicide, CW Evans Anderson, Steve Corino, Low Key, Sanjay Dump. I mean, all these guys are on that show literally an hour, time enough for them to take all their 01 stuff out. So New Jack was the main event against somebody in a hardcore match. So and there was CZW who that show was in that building that night that I worked for. And it was crazy because when Scott went in and talked to the guy, because it was the anniversary show, and the guy was just like, "Man, I just ain't got no room to put him." And Scott just went to bat for me. He said, "Look, man, my man can work." And they got us in a four-way, I think, what it ended up being. And they ended up making me and Scott the final two competitors in the 4-way, and me and Scott were so used to beating the shit out of each other. And I think that's why we got over. We just beat the shit out of each other. That's what me and Scott did.
Just one of the greatest moments of combat zone wrestling history.
And ECW, you know, you had to, I mean, that's what it was. You had to kick, you know, beat the shit out of each other before they would believe it. And like you said, for them not to know us, I think Scott had worked for him a couple of times, but I'd never been there. And for them not to know us, they, like you said, by the end of the thing, bro, it was, you know, standing ovation, chanting and everything.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, I mean, you, up to that point, and even around North Carolina, you're pretty well known as bounty hunter. But then when Gouge first started, how did Grog approach you to come in as Cowboy Willie Watts?
Let me be straight up. It wasn't Grog. I wanted to do a cowboy gimmick because, you know, I'm originally from Tennessee, so I'm old country boy anyway. So when they came up with this Gouge gimmick only, and it just, now I think he gave me the name. I won't take credit for that, but I said I want to do a cowboy, and he was like, Bob Watts, wasn't Bob Watts used to run the territories? What was his name?
Bill Watts.
Bill Watts used to run
Cowboy
the
Bill
territories.
Watts.
Yep, man. He said, Cowboy Willie Watts. And I was like, let's run with it.
Bone sheepless or nothing else.
And I always wanted to do that gimmick because I knew I could do the Southern drawl because I'm a country boy, and I knew. Man, when I first started it, I mean, I don't know if you remember, but bro, I had every gimmick you could have. I had a Brandon Aaron, I had the rope, I had the cowbell, I had the Hank Williams Jr., which I knew Country Boy survived word for word, so I came out singing that. So, but I love that gimmick, man. That's probably the funnest time I had in wrestling. And me and Chili had a blast as the American Gangsters, but that gimmick, because I wanted to do it, and then when Gouge came out, it was right there and it jumped off. Man, I had a blast, man. I love that gimmick.
The Bounty Hunter, Willie Watts. Very good. And we have more to come, right?
Yeah, stay tuned. Next week, we talk more about when he joined the Urban Legends and Gouge, and we're going to talk about Dax Harwood and how he teamed with him one night as part of the Urban Legends.
Very nice. You can catch that on our next show and all the past guests who've been on Surfer J's Indie Corner. If you check out our social media pages, and while you're there, check out our big question of the week.
It's time for the Faction 919 Big Question. The big question: what wrestling manager through the course of their career has had the greatest impact on professional wrestling? Send your answers to faction919nc@gmail.com. We'll take a look at the answers and compare them to our own on our next show.
And who had the biggest impact, a manager of all time? I got a feeling some people's answers, what it will be. And we're getting ready to talk to him. Darren Stone, tell him about the wise man, the wisest man you've ever spoke to, beside yourself.
Yes, he is the second wisest man behind myself. I have taught him so much during our interviews that he thanks me multiple times, but the second part to the greatest interview of all times with Paul Heyman. Go ahead and roll it, fan man. Roll it! Roll my interview! Roll it!
You closed up shop in 2001, correct?
Yes.
You then moved to OVW. Basically at that time, am I?
No, I moved on to main roster WWE in 2001.
Okay, 2001. But you started working with OVW at some point in that time, correct?
2005, right?
Okay. Is that where you, I mean, because you were a booker, it said a lot of mostly backstage stuff with OVW, correct?
Never once appeared on camera.
Okay. Is that where you first met Brock Lesnar?
No, I met Brock Lesnar in 2002, 2 years after he won the NCAA Division I Heavyweight Championship, and after he had done his penance in OVW, and he was being moved up to the main roster, and we met each other and instantly clicked and realized that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, not only for Brock Lesnar and for Paul Heyman, but for WWE itself, and that all of the stars must align for this most unique box office attraction to fulfill his potential. And therefore, already having been in this industry for several decades as a photographer and then as a performer and as a behind-the-scenes mover and shaker, at 35 years old, 36 was 2002, so I was 36 when I got with Brock. I was already a seasoned veteran, and therefore was the right in the right place at the right time, and I was the right person to be the advocate for this most unique individual.
Did your all success together even surpass what your original thought was?
No, because I always believed that Brock Lesnar would conquer not only the world, but the entire WWE universe. Did I think that we'd ever be in line to conquer the Undertaker's undefeated streak at WrestleMania, which was the holy grail of any victory in WWE? I don't know if my predictions were to be that level of success, but Brock Lesnar could do anything that he wants in his life. Left WWE and knocked out Randy Couture, the greatest heavyweight champion in the history of UFC, to become the UFC heavyweight champion. We wrote a best-selling book together, which was about Brock Lesnar's life. So I can't say that. Did I have lofty expectations? Absolutely. Did we surpass them? Yes, but my expectations were that we would surpass our expectations.
What was your thought when they approached you to basically split with Brock and now you're with Roman?
Nobody approached me on that. Brock Lesnar's contract was up in April or May 2000 and 2020, and after the match with Drew McIntyre in that WrestleMania, Brock Lesnar went home to Saskatchewan, and he was done in WWE. He wasn't coming back, and my calendar was open, and so was Roman Reigns's. So Roman Reigns and I formed a duo to serve as special counsel to the tribal chief on the island of Relevancy. And then Brock Lesnar, seeing the success that Roman Reigns was enjoying, decided to come back. But I mean, there was no conscious effort to split from Brock Lesnar to then ascend to Roman Reigns. I ended up with Roman Reigns because Brock Lesnar left WWE for a while.
What is your preferred job in the business? Do you prefer the backstage work, or do you love being out on camera, riling the fans up, etc.?
All of it. Every single moment of it. Even during the week and just navigating through the creative process with Roman Reigns as to what we're going to do that Friday on television. I am enjoying this run more than any other run I've ever had in my entire career, because I work with someone like the tribal chief Roman. Actually, because I work with the tribal chief Roman Reigns, I can't say someone like, because there's no one like Roman Reigns.
You've talked about his current reign. You're talking in the likes of Bob Backlund and Bruno Sammartino right now. Is there an end in sight? Is there an end in sight to this title reign?
No.
That's it. Just no. No, there is no.
You asked me a yes or no question. Is there an end in sight? What am I supposed to do? Sit here and start to quote Socrates? It's a yes or a no question. It wasn't subject to interpretation, nor did it require any validation or any quantification. It's a yes or no question. Yes or no? No.
So you're
Hell
telling me
no. F no. No, 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 no. No.
Roman Reigns will still be the champion, and who's left to defend? I guess at that point,
a locker room full of very hungry challengers that prove themselves on every day and every television show, and have been spearheading the biggest box office phenomenon in WWE history. Last year, WWE grossed $1 billion for the first time. Why? Because it has the best roster it's ever had, and because on top, the top attraction, the undisputed champion, the top star for 365 days, and all of those 365 days, Roman Reigns. Have you acknowledged your tribal chief today?
I haven't, but I will make sure I do so.
I shall enjoy the anticipation of you acknowledging your tribal chief on that day.
That was wonderful. Ah. This is why I do the interviews. None of you guys can handle my greatness, my ability to talk to people and to get these riveting information from them. The tribal chief has acknowledged all of us in that interview.
Man, oh man, what a hell of an interview, sir. I will say, hell of an
Yes,
interview.
yes, it was. I did
Yes.
great. I mean, thank you, Paul Heyman.
Yes, yeah, but that is true. Thank you to the WWE, one of the greatest managers of all time, and the king and the creator of ECW, Mr. Paul Heyman on Faction 919. We can't thank you enough. And before we close out, I gotta ask all you guys: have you acknowledged your Roman Reigns as your tribal chief?
Yes.
I acknowledge Sammy.
So we'll see, and we'll see if Cody Rhodes does the same at WrestleMania. Darren Stall, you did a hell of a job, sir. I have to say that.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
So, and hey, have you acknowledged Faction 919 as your number one wrestling podcast? You better have. All right, but we'll be coming at you with more in the very near future. So remember, we're on a bi-weekly schedule. So not this coming up Sunday, but next Sunday, join us again, episode 6 of season 2. And in the meantime, in between time, you can find all this stuff. Surfer Jay's Indie Corner, JB's Digging the Dirt. We go back in time with C. Rich, Fan Man in the Notes, and Darren Stone's wonderful interview work. All on social media: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok at Faction 919. We'll see you again on the your number one wrestling podcast.